Yeah, listen up. This one's for the queens who rise from the ashes. Healing scars and building castles. Protecting peace, setting boundaries. Walking in their power unapologetically.
Welcome back to the Pinterest Board Mama podcast, where we're shifting ideas around prioritizing yourself in motherhood. This is where moms get to completely transform their health and show up as the mom they desire to be without the mom guilt. They become their Pinterest Board Mama selves. I'm your host, Amanda Rurick. All right, welcome back to the Pinterest Board Mama podcast. We have a guest on the podcast today. So please welcome Chelsea Bartell-Smith. She is the emotional archaeologist, where she helps women take their pain and fuel their purpose. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here. This is really exciting, and I think a lot of the women in your audience are really going to resonate with this conversation.
Yeah, I am so excited to have you on here. I've been following your work for a while, and I just love what you share, love what you do. So let's just jump on in. How did you get started in this? Because I feel like it's such a unique thing. I never heard anybody talking about the things that you do. So let us in on how did you get started?
Yeah. First and foremost, personal experience. Had an interesting upbringing, which I think many of us do. I don't think that's uncommon anymore, but I didn't know what to call it at the time. Right? I didn't even know that it was stress. I didn't know that it was anxiety. I didn't know that it was trauma. I would have never categorized it as that. But the more and more difficult experiences that I had, there had to be some outlet. You know, it was showing through my skin. I had terrible acne from like the 5th grade to graduating high school. It was showing in my weight. Like I was just holding on to weight. I wasn't energized. I wasn't excited. I wasn't myself, you know, and at a special time in your life when you're like building that self-concept, I just knew something was fundamentally wrong from such a young age. And so I started to write poetry as a way to make sense of what I was going through. And that became the catalyst for me to take what was painful and turn it into art, turn it into some form of creativity and something that I was passionate about, something that was really separate from what I was growing up in. And I wrote poetry from like 13. Well, I think I started really young, but I really picked it back up at 13. And graduated high school, still kept writing, went through a really difficult relationship, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm going to publish this book. Like, all of these need to be out in the world. And learned how to self-publish a book. And I remember getting my first big girl job. I was a receptionist at a company, and my book would sit on my desk, and I stared at this. There was big doors and windows where my desk was, and I just saw life happening outside. I'm answering the phone. I'm taking these really menial tasks. I'm seeing my book every day, and I'm seeing the windows outside, and it just started to creep in. Maybe you're meant for something more. Maybe you're meant for more than just sitting behind the desk and answering phones and taking all these tasks out of other people's plates. Maybe you're meant for something more. So I came home to my now husband, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I have to quit. I have to quit. I can't keep doing this. There's something bigger for me. And I didn't know what that was, and he didn't know what that was, but he took a chance and he was like, do it. So I remember taking my last paycheck, and I invested in a business coach, and that was part of the tuition of that program. And I had no idea where the rest of the money was going to come from, but I just knew that betting on myself in that way was more important than what I was doing at that company. And it just started to evolve from there. I started showing up on social media, kind of lacing my poetry into that, but really the poetry was the launching pad into, hey, I know how to maneuver emotions into something that's meaningful and that's beautiful in the world. So that's really how I got into coaching. It just kind of evolved from there.
Wow, that is really amazing. I mean, it's amazing what you can learn by actually going through something yourself, and like you said, turn pain into purpose. So it's a beautiful story of how you turn what you were going through and working through yourself and turned it into your purpose. So that is amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more specifically, like what do you do now? Like how do you help other women work through that process themselves?
So the way that this evolution started to kind of come together for me was realizing that I couldn't go back and change the past. I couldn't undo what was done. I couldn't blame, I couldn't be angry, I couldn't shame myself for not knowing I was a child. And when I looked at it from that lens and I went, okay, I'm not going to go back and I'm not going to change these experiences. What can I make them mean instead? What can I use here? How can I draw wisdom from this and build it into something else? Right? So every woman that comes into my world, they've had experiences, you know, being diagnosed by doctors with ADHD, anxiety, bipolar. They've done a decade of therapy. They're on these medications. And for me, the way that I look at that is there's something so foundational that was fractured for them, a moment that they missed love, a moment that was too big, too much, too painful, too fast. And we go back to that moment. We return to many of those moments, but there's usually one in particular that just holds that magic. There was something big that they were meant to do. There was something meaningful and would give back to this world in a large way. And when they can go back and face that fear, then they can give that gift to the world, right? But it's that moment that's holding all of that magic. So slowly I facilitate helping their nervous system first be ready to return to that moment, because in that moment we were probably 4, 5, 10, 13. Our nervous system just wasn't ready for an experience like that. So first we have to work on how can my nervous system hold what happened back then? How can I have the capacity to go back to a moment where I felt extremely alone, right? I was in this big amount of distress for my 5-year-old nervous system. How can I prep my nervous system to hold that? Then when we're in that moment, then it's about how can I love on this? How can I show up as the figure that I would have needed at that time, right? Then that creates this, we loosen ourselves from the perspective of potentially blame or anger or shame, and then we come into compassion. Now that I love this part, what can I do with them on my team, right? They probably were playful and childlike and imaginative. How can I move with them to create, you know, the women in my world have, they've written books, they have gone on to get degrees, they want to go into social justice, they want to bring people together, they've done really incredible things, but that's having that younger part of themselves on their team.
Wow, that is really amazing for, you know, people to experience your work and then be able to completely shift who they are and what they're doing and just like their whole identity. You know, I mean, that's so beautiful. Amazing, Chelsea. So the women that go through your program, work with you, what do they come out of that experience of working with you? What do they come out with? Like, what is their new either identity or what is it that they're leaving with?
Yeah, I've worked a really long time to like refine what that actually looks like. And the way that I would describe that woman is courageously expressed. So there is no reservation about who they are, right? They show up unapologetically, they show up loud, they show up big, they show up passionately. They, most importantly, show up with confidence, right? I think all of us are really hungry for confidence and we don't know how to attain it. It kind of seems elusive, and some people think they know a method and maybe they do. But really the way I've seen the women in my world transform is they build confidence by going into those moments of fear, of rejection, of grief, of loneliness, and reclaiming that part of themselves. There's a certain kind of resilience that they form in that. So the women that they come out on the other side as, most importantly, confident, resilient, they want to express themselves. They are self-trusting. They are expressive. They are so in love with being alive. Then what they birth from there is, there was just no way that they could have allowed that in when they were in survival. right? We're contracted, we want to stay small, we want to stay protected. So when they get to that space where they've reclaimed a lot of those fears and they've like liberated that survival energy, now they can pour into themselves. Now they can pour into this dream, this passion, this creative pursuit.
That's really incredible to see, that transformation. I'm sure for you, like to be able to like witness it within, months and like be looking at the same person, but not the same person.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's such beautiful, rewarding work, and that would be interesting. I've never done something like that, but having like one of my clients sit down and like watch a clip from when we first started meeting to now, I think they would be so shocked. They would be like, that's a stranger. I don't know that person.
Yeah, that might be a fun tool that, if you feel called to like pull that in, like that could be really fun for you and your clients. Because it's like, I feel like when we go through that journey, it's like, okay, like I went through that journey, like I've made, these changes. I'm not her anymore, but it's like you honestly forget, like you almost, like you move past that and it's hard to remember what that felt like, what that looked like, what that was. And it's just so easy to forget, right?
Yeah. And I think what's sometimes challenging about this work is a lot of it isn't tangible, right? It's not like I'm going to the gym and I can like see progress pictures over the last couple months. It's very psychological. There's a lot of emotional labor that goes into it that sometimes if we didn't document it, if we, like for me, I keep a lot of journals, I keep a lot of notes everywhere. So sometimes I'll see this little reflection of somebody that I was in the past. But if we don't tend to keep those things, we won't really realize how far we've come. So a question that I like to ask people is, if you had to trade positions with you from 3 months ago, would you? And then that really jars them and they're like, yeah, I don't really care for who I was 3 months ago. I like where I am now. Not everything's not perfect, but I like where I am now.
Yeah, wow, that is a very powerful question. And I feel like that can be like such a source of motivation too, because doing this work is not, like you said, it's not tangible. So I would imagine, be difficult to keep the motivation and be like, okay, well, why am I doing this again? Like, what's even happening? Because you don't see anything.
Right.
Yeah, so that's so interesting. So switching gears a little bit. What is, one of your favorite tools, or maybe a tool that you use most commonly with your clients?
That gets to be a really unique experience too, because every nervous system is different. So I wouldn't use tools for somebody that's in like a freeze or a shutdown response, which is where we're very self-critical. Maybe we kind of feel numb, we're checked out, we feel exhausted. So I wouldn't use the same tools for someone that's there as I would for someone that's maybe overachiever and they're like, there's always urgency and they're overdoing and there's always this like hustle energy. So it gets to be a really unique experience in finding what works for them. However, tools for me that I use pretty close to daily, if not multiple times, something that is really easy and like brings me back. So something that you could do is like, I always have essential oils by my desk and you just plug one nostril or the other and you tap and you smell at the same time. So we're activating a cranial nerve and that really helps with not being plugged into our executive abilities. Like if she's not here, I'm not as creative, I'm not like future focused, I'm not really planning, I'm not oriented. So what I like to do is, okay, maybe I'm feeling foggy, maybe I've been staring at the computer too long, maybe I've been like working on the same project and I don't feel like I'm making progress. So I'll use that essential oil, I'll tap on my nose, and we can have a preference. Maybe this is getting off in the weeds, but we can have a preference about like, do I like my left side better, right? Which is usually more parasympathetic focused. Okay, I need to calm, I need to find a little bit more balance. Or if we're feeling kind of flat, doing that on the right side, which that's going to be a more sympathetic balance. So I need to find a little bit more mobilization, a little bit more engagement in what I'm doing. Yeah.
Well, that's really fun. I had no idea that that was something that you could do, or that that was something that could really activate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That is really, really cool.
Yeah, it can get really complex. But I love that. I love, my brain really loves problem solving. So I love like having people come to me say, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm going through. And then like trying to vet out, is it this tool that's going to be most supportive? Do you actually like this better? And it can get really intricate in that way, because I still might have few clients that are more on the side of maybe like freeze or shutdown. So they're feeling numb, they're feeling detached, um, but the same tools may not help them. Right? So like our nervous system communicates in 5 different languages is the best way I like to think about it. So we're communicating through it's listening and it's understanding through our visual system, through our respiratory system, through our interoceptive, so like, am I hungry? Am I hot? Am I cold? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Our proprioceptive, so like, am I touching the chair right now? Or am I, are my feet on the floor, right? Where am I in the room? And then our vestibular, so am I upright? Is my body balanced, right? Like, where is my head in space? So when we can communicate with those channels, we can give them new information. So that's like why the smelling would be so important. We're giving new information that's orienting us to this environment rather than the past, right? Because sometimes when we're like the women in my world that they start working on their book. One woman, she's writing a book about a very, very complex childhood. So every time she's writing this book, she's triggered. She is very, very activated and she's thrown into the past. So we have to work tools in there for her to be able to get this book through. Otherwise, she would go into a trauma response and then all of a sudden she's not really here and that language center goes offline and she can't bring that book forward. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That is, I mean, that's like so powerful. Something I would never think to do that. It can be so helpful. And like you said, just kind of like get you out of that fight or flight or that freeze fawn state and just kind of help move you, not suppressing it, but to help you move through it with ease and without going back into that moment of time. Right. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So I would love to hear, I know you're starting to share some client stories and like, some wins and successes. So I actually want to dive into that. Tell us a little bit more about, whether it's one or like one particular client story, or maybe it's like an overarching theme of when these women are coming out of this work with you, like after they've gone through your programs and things like that, like what are they experiencing? Like what are they propelling themselves forward into?
Yeah. One of my favorite client stories, just because the evolution is so visible, right? Where most of it really isn't. Most of it is in these little epiphanies where I'm experiencing that magic with them on a call, but some of that maybe gets lost in translation when I tell the story. But one of the clients that I worked with, her name is Isa, and actually I have a couple podcast episodes with her. Her very first message to me was, I'm fearing my potential. I know that there's something more that I'm meant for, but I fear it. And so the more that we chatted, she has a gorgeous voice and she really wanted to show up and share her singing on social media. And she knew that she wanted to get into music. But it was something she kind of lost touch with as a child and she wasn't really sure at what point if that could ever be a career. And so that fear of visibility, that fear of like being in the spotlight, that kept her away from that gift, right? So the more that we worked on directly on confidence, what did it mean to be seen when you were growing up? When you think about putting a post out there, what happens in your body, right? So many, we bypass that experience a lot, right? We're always like moving from our head. But what happens in your body when you think about doing that thing that excites you, but maybe you're also nervous about? So we worked through those layers, and the more that we got to that, she finally, I think it was on a call, she told me this. She was like, Chelsea, I'm going to put my first song out into the world. And like went and made a music video, a very professional music video, got it out on Spotify, got it out on iTunes. And when I asked her, if you ever thought, if I told you, 3 months ago that you would have put a song out into the world, what would you have said? And she said, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have thought that was possible. Yeah. So just to be able to see them like go through this portal and come out on the other side with the song out in the world, the book out into the world, the company started. It's beautiful work. It is.
Yeah, that is truly, truly incredible to see that transformation. Like I can't even imagine being able to see someone transform like that. So like that's
Yeah.
truly, truly amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay. So If someone wanted to get started with working with you, or like they just wanted to know more, what advice would you give them? Like if they're just like, this sounds really interesting. Like I'm kind of teetering on this idea. Like how do I get started? Like what do I do? What advice would you give that person?
First, I would tell them that listening to that little voice is the best thing that I ever did. If I wouldn't have listened to that voice, I wouldn't be here. So definitely listen to that intuitive pull that there's something more meant for you. Maybe this will also resonate. I'll detour for a second. I worked with a mom, and she was stay at home and really thought that that was all she would ever be. And at first, going into this work, it was like, okay, I just want to make the anxiety go away. I want to make the OCD symptoms less. I want to be more present for my kids, right? And while we did work on all those things, over time, this belief came up about I'm not capable enough, I'm not smart enough to go back to school. And when we worked with that, she came to this epiphany that, for one, she's very capable, but second, that she had this desire on her heart to start a business, and she wanted to be an herbalist and start working with the earth and medicine, and it just is so beautiful. I'm actually working with her now, but the same thing, she never really saw herself as more than what she was, and this whole time that desire had been on her heart. Maybe she hadn't even admitted it to herself yet, but the more that we peeled back those layers of who she had to be to survive the things that she went through, then she actually got to choose who she wanted to be. That like real self wanted to come forward. Now she also didn't want to be visible. Now she's out on social media, right? Now she's also like deep in research. I want to have a storefront. I don't want to just go out on social media and post what I have. I want to have a storefront where I meet with people, where I have community. So something like that is just so incredible to see. So first, listen to that. Listen to that little voice, that little nudge that says, I'm meant for something more. And to go deeper into my world or into the work that I do, the best place to start, if you don't know what it is that you want to do or you want to bring forward, I would say my app. So that's more of like a daily experience of, I'm going to start learning how to regulate my nervous system and my emotions so that this purpose can be revealed to me. If you know that nudge, I would say reach out to me directly, right? From there, we can either go into one-on-one work where we're really deep in like bringing that purpose forward and all of what it means to own that brilliance, because that in itself is a big task that comes with visibility, and I have to be clear about my message and who I help and who I serve. I'm in constant creation, and sometimes that can be daunting, so we get to work through all those little things. So if you don't know, my app, Courageously Expressed. If you do know, I would say reach out to me directly.
Awesome. Okay, amazing. And we'll make sure to link those down in the show notes. That way, if anyone's interested, you can just check it out down there and reach out to Chelsea directly. All right. So to wrap everything up, because I've absolutely enjoyed this conversation, but I'm sure our listeners just want to walk away with something that they can either try today or do today, something that that they can implement, right? Like, I mean, this is all great to like talk through it and listen to it, but we know that you have to actually implement it. Like if we want to see changes, we want to be or do something different, we actually have to implement something.
Yeah.
So what are like one or two simple things that our listeners can implement today?
I would say one thing that's made a dramatic change for me was staying off my phone for the first hour of the morning. Especially I think this could go for anybody, but like for me as somebody who shows up on social media is like in creation, whether I'm writing a poem or I'm writing a post, I'm like diluting my magic by like jumping into my phone and like looking at emails, and I'm already overwhelming myself with stuff I don't need, right? So like stay off your phone I try to hold it for as long as I can, but at least for the first hour. As far as another practice, something that this is more for regulating emotions, and while it can go deep, just a base practice of, hold on, what am I feeling right now? For me, I always like to take a hand on my chest and like, what am I feeling? Right? Okay, I'm about to jump on the podcast with you, right? Or I'm about to have a tough conversation with my husband. What am I feeling? And can I just help that feeling feel more at home? So I like to ask, okay, what am I feeling? And make it not so daunting. Does it have a color? Does it have a texture? does it remind me of a certain shape? And then saying something like, thank you for reaching out to me. I hear you, and I'll do my best to show up for you. It could be as simple as that. But just in having short conversations with some of the women in my world, or they like maybe drop in my DMs and they share what they're going through, I give them that prompt, and they're like, yeah, the feeling isn't even there anymore. I'm like, yeah, the feeling just persists because we don't listen to it. So stay off your phone the first hour of the morning, and then be really tuned in to what's going on in your body and just talk with it.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I think that's such an important reminder, especially, for us moms, busy women, trying to do all the things all the time, like really taking that moment to like tune in multiple times a day, not just like one time and you're like, oh, check the box and move on. Like really coming back into our bodies and checking in with ourselves and allowing ourselves to feel instead of just being like, oh, nope, I gotta show up for my kids. Oop, nope, I gotta show up for work or my husband or whatever my to-do list, blah, 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 whatever, and then completely disregarding ourselves. So I think that that is so important and a beautiful reminder for all of us, myself included, to make sure that we are doing that more frequently. So thank you so much, Chelsea. It was amazing having you on the pod today. And then before we sign off, tell our listeners where we can find you.
Yes. So I'm always on Instagram. It would be shocking to not find me on Instagram. Under The Emotional Archaeologist. You can find me in my app, Courageously Express, which I'll give you the link and we can put that in the show notes. And if you want to reach out to me directly, just message me on Instagram. Like I said, I'm there pretty often. So
Amazing. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. It was wonderful having you on, and we will talk to you all later.
thank you so much.